the other aspect of the conference that was really powerful was actually there was a race and a diversity session. And so going back to what I had talked about earlier, so there was a men's group that had a real strong impact, and then there was this diversity session in which I participated and was called up as one of 4 or 5 other people to the front of the group and was asked some questions about my thoughts and feelings related to being an African American in America. And
that's right out there on the spot.
It was right on this, and I was able to reflect a couple of thoughts back to the group of assembled people for this session, one of which was around something that is important to me, that people, that white people spend some time among themselves talking about race issues. I have had lots of conversations with black and white and brown and other people about race, and people seem to come to me and want to ask me lots of different questions, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I welcome that. But I also encourage that there's some work that within the white community or within any community needs to be done around those issues.
Right.
Come together, then come back, and let's find different ways to interact, which is a little bit what I think we're doing with our men's group. We're coming together, trying to sort through in a constructive, facilitated fashion some of the issues we bring to the table, and then we're better equipped to bring that out to our partners and our colleagues and friends, etc. And I was encouraging some of that within the white community, and felt just compelled and empowered to just say, if you need a suggestion, that's one thing I would suggest. Secondly, I just reflected on my personal experience and had a real sense and shared an experience that my mother had given to me as a child. And my mother, I'm adopted, and she's a white woman, and she just did a fantastic job raising me. And I shared keeping me safe. And so what I was expressing there was we need to be allies to one another, and we can be. And we have to, and we need to be willing to put ourselves out there for people, particularly people who may be defined as outsiders. And the final thought I'll share, because this is one of the things that you said early on, Tom, which I think is important about fatherhood. And that is that we need to be and can be fathers to our own kids, but to each other. And that this idea of fatherhood isn't just limited to your offspring or to some patriarchal definition.
So you're saying you need to be a father to me and I need to be a father to you?
Yes.
Can you say a little bit more about how you see that happening?
I see that happening by us.
We have to raise each other.
We have to, when it may be needed, be there to support and raise one another. But also be there to have the tough conversation that may need to be had about, hey, you're going in the wrong direction.
This is that nurturing quality.
Nurture,
again,
support, mentor, coach. Those are roles that we need to play with one another, and it's something that I've taken away from the men's group. And it's not just, again, defined within family. And it's not necessarily to be defined in some exclusive, just the guy's way. I mean, I think it's a broader definition about the role that men can play to the community in a positive and constructive way, to support and coach and play that role for those who need it, those you work with, those you interact with. And there's just a deeper level of responsibility around that new definition of fatherhood that I find really important and something I've taken away from the group. And it relates to how we can be allies to one another, how we can support one another.
Well, this is something that I think we could talk a lot about. We're hoping to come back in another month or two and have part 2 of this conversation. We've got about 5 minutes. But I'm really interested in what you're saying here, Brian, because what I hear you saying is I think we're all like feeling the gratitude for having the experience of this group and wanting to extend it outward. But since you did touch on race relations a little bit and the challenges that still exist here, do you feel like saying a little bit about what you see going on in Portland, again, to bring it home, and about how some of these ideas and techniques, if you will, might be applied to bringing peace in the larger community or more reconciliation?
I think that what I see in Portland are many divided camps, and there's history and experience behind a lot of those divisions. Interestingly for me, as somebody who has come here, I'm not a native Portlander, I am not as attuned to some of the history, and so I have found myself in many situations where I'm kind of a bridge. And so one of the places
being that bridge again, huh?
I guess so. And one of the places where I think, and I see this with people of all races and nationalities, they come into this community and are serving as bridges and trying to bring neighbors together who may have never really spoken for one reason or another, or who are moving into areas that are gentrified and frankly where longtime residents are either have moved out or are moving out, but still trying ways to honor the history that exists within a neighborhood and to incorporate folks into their home, into their livelihoods, into their businesses, into their restaurants, and so I would just encourage folks to find ways to be bridges where they feel comfortable.
Right.
And I guess the bottom line is, and my wife and I had an experience at a restaurant where somebody came up to us, he and his wife. He's African American, she's white, and they saw us as a mixed couple, and they just came over to us and said, "Who are you? We want to know your names, and you look like us in some respects, and let's get to know one another in some way."
Right.
And so taking the risk.
Yeah.
Go
up and say hello.
Go up and say hello.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do it in some inauthentic way. That says, I need a black friend or something, but you can't be afraid to also acknowledge those differences and then find ways to where there may be differences, and that's okay, and where there are similarities, but talk to people.
Yeah.